She had taken a picture of the monitor and said a girl appeared out of the doorway after you left the room and watched you walk down the hall. What do you mean someone's in there? We both peek through the window and look, and behold, the room is empty. All of a sudden, my daughter says, "Uncle, did you touch me?" I'm not sure how long we stayed at the occult scene before hearing a man's low and ominous voice behind us saying, "Welcome, friends." Hello and welcome to a new episode of Real Spooky Stories, the place where I tell your real spooky stories. If you'd like to share your story, give me a little email on realspookystoriespodcast@gmail.com, or you can click any of the social media below and get in touch that way. So this episode is a hospitals episode. I know that sounds a bit weird. When you hear about spooky stories and things, I feel like there's always people who've worked in hospitals who have like spooky stories. I feel like there's just a kind of energy there. Also, sorry if you can hear little background noises. I have a sleeping puppy lying on top of me while I'm doing this. So if you hear little snoring or little noises, it's just him. And it's not a ghost. Okay, I hope you enjoyed the last 2 weeks' episodes. I really enjoyed doing them episodes. I actually enjoyed the episodes with Amy. It's just fun. It's just better when I've got a little guest with me. I haven't got one today, unfortunately, but it's just better when I've got a guest with me. I've got someone to actually talk to. And I know I'm talking to you, but I've just got someone with me to talk to and discuss the stories with and just have a little laugh with. So if anyone wants to actually just do an episode with me, feel free. We can do it on Zoom. You can come to me, I can come to you. Just give me a little message, because honestly, I appreciate the company. And it's just fun. It's just something to do. It's just fun, isn't it? It's just a bit of fun. And also the week before, Valentine's episode, I really enjoyed that one as well. I think I'm going to start including in every episode now a little creepypasta story at the end, because I just enjoy a good creepypasta story. And there's classic ones, you know, like Slender Man and things like that we all know and we've all heard, but that's where they all came from, like Slender Man, and there's quite a few different ones that I've heard of, but I think I'm going to start including them at the end of episodes. Just, I know they're not real and they're what someone's wrote. It's just a nice vibe, isn't it? It's just a cool vibe. Anyway, sorry, that was a long intro, but yeah, you have joined us for the hospitals episode. I've got a few stories today from different subreddits, so let's get into the first story. So this one is taken from the subreddit Paranormal Encounters, and it is titled, "My friend just told me this hospital ghost story when he was a nurse." So, over the weekend, I was at a barbecue with friends. We got on the topic of ghosts because recently my husband's co-worker shared with him some pictures that she took when she worked at the Stanley Hotel of a ghost in the hallway. They are interesting photos. But my friend then said, "Oh, I can top that." And he proceeded to tell me that when he worked in a hospital about 10 years ago, him and another nurse were monitoring the cameras on the ICU floor and saw a child running in and out of the rooms. They radioed the floor staff and were told they didn't have a child in the ICU at the time. So my friend and another nurse physically went down to the room to investigate. No one was there. They get back to the nurse station and the nurse that had stayed there was stunned. She said, "You won't believe what I saw on the monitor after you guys left." She had taken a picture of the monitor and said a girl appeared out of the doorway after you left the room and watched you walk down the hall. And then apparently the story and picture caused a big stir among staff because a couple of days prior a young girl had passed in the ICU after an anaphylactic episode and some thought the image looked like her. Then management stepped in and made people sign non-disclosure agreements and had a whole process around this because apparently paranormal activity is a very regular thing at hospitals. This whole story and picture has really captivated me the past few days. Everything he said seemed 100% authentic, but this image, I made him text it to me and it's dated around the time he said, "It's haunting me. What do you think? Is it real? Do these things happen regularly at hospitals?" Okay, that's the end of the story. There's actually an image attached to this and it does look like a child and it's actually a bit weird and creepy. I'll attach it. I'll put it on Instagram and Facebook, Real Spooky Stories, so you can see what it looks like. If you click on the story below where I've linked it, as always, it's there if you want to look at it. It's quite spooky. Someone's commented, registered nurse, paranormal is very common at hospitals. After a while, you just accept it and learn to live with it. Example, I was working in a surgery recovery unit prior to COVID. It was the end of the day, all patients discharged or moved to other units, and I was shutting down the department to leave. As I walked through the open bay area, I heard a gruff male voice say, nurse. I just turned to where I heard the voice, empty bay, and said, not now, sir, and continued out of the department. Somebody else has commented too, my grandmother has often spoke of seeing ghosts when she was a child and a teenager. When she was in the hospital recently, she was about 88 at the time. I was sitting in the room with her. I saw her look at something at the entrance of the room and then track it into the room and into the bathroom, which was around a corner. At the exact same time, the little night lights near the floor and by the bathroom, same wall, flickered about 4 times. Grandma turned to me and asked, who's that? Not really wanting to ask, but did anyway. I said, who's who? To which she said, the man who just walked in here and went around the corner. It happened about 3 times while she was in the hospital and I was visiting. Obviously not sustained, but made me go, Somebody else commented, security at the hospital I work at regularly sees children on the cameras at night. They believe 100% in ghosts. It is a spooky place, the hospital, isn't it? It's never a nice place. It's a place that you don't want to be. It's never a good thing to go there. It's never for something good, you know what I mean? It's always because of an issue with your body or whatever. Like, you don't want to be there, or you're obviously there for yourself, or you're there for a family member who's sick or who's got something. It's just not a nice place. There's nothing nice about a hospital. I mean, obviously, apart from if you're like having a baby or something, it's just got a specific energy, I feel like, in hospitals. But it is quite spooky. Also, the one that said your nan, who was 88, saw something, I feel like a lot of people say this. I feel like when older people are near the end and are going to pass on soon, they do see things, and other people, like I've spoken to a few friends saying, oh, my nan saw this, and they say, oh, my nan was saying this, but it's hallucinating. It's just, I don't know if it's paranormal, but people believe that it's people coming to take them, like in a nice way, like it's people coming to visit them, and I don't know. I don't know. Is it paranormal, or is it just something else? I don't know. Anyway, if you click on the picture below, if you click on the link below for that one, the picture will be there. Okay, let's go on to story number 2. So this one is taken from Paranormal Encounters, and it is titled Hospital Ghost. Hi everyone, I'm hoping to get some insight into a series of unsettling experiences I've had at a hospital over the past few months. Here's a summary of what's been happening. Encounter 1, January. While staying at the hospital for a month with my sick child, I experienced several strange events. A sound machine fell off a side table and a light flickered erratically, but I was the only one who witnessed these occurrences. However, during a time when doctors and nurses were updating us on my daughter's condition, magnets flew across the room seemingly on their own. The staff saw this happen but seemed puzzled and chose to ignore it. Encounter 2, last month. While sleeping at home, I felt a hand run down my arm and then a poke on my back. My husband was asleep beside me. I initially thought it was just nerves from sleeping awkwardly, but after falling asleep again, I was abruptly woken by a loud "Mum," yet there was no one around when I looked. Encounter 3, yesterday. During a recent hospital visit for a routine checkup, my daughter was asleep during her chemo session. While I was talking to a nurse and looking at photos on the wall, I felt a distinct tug on my sweater. I turned around, expecting to see someone, but no one was there. The tugging happened 2 more times. I spoke with one of the nurses and she said, "Trust me, I believe you." She called the child life specialist over and she said, "Come with me, I want to show you something." She guided me to a door and had me examine the door. See, it doesn't lock, there is no lock, there is no way for this door to catch on anything, it just swings open. Sometimes when we try to open the door, it won't open for a while. I looked for any possible explanation and couldn't find one. Then she called over another nurse and she verified the story. Apparently there's a ghost that likes to play pranks. I'm curious if anyone has experienced similar events or has any theories about why these encounters might be happening to me. Any insights or similar experiences would be greatly appreciated. Thanks in advance. Update, I now have an encounter number 4 to share with you all. Today was a special day. My daughter, 3 years old, who is currently undergoing chemo, has finally made it into maintenance. We had a mini celebration at the clinic in which she got to ring the bell. Since it was a short day, they moved us into a room we don't normally stay in, which is close to the nurse's station. While waiting for family to arrive, I went back to the door to peek out to see if anyone had arrived yet. Sure enough, family all arrived at the same time. We were all crammed into a tiny room and talking to my daughter before she would make her grand entrance in the hallway. All of a sudden, my daughter says, "Uncle, did you touch me?" while grabbing her back and looking around. He replied, "No, sweetie," and laughed a bit. We were near each other, but clearly nobody touched her. He was about a foot away, and everyone else was sitting down or by a wall. I had told everyone about the instances above and said, "See, I told you guys." Everyone got quiet and just looked at each other in a bit of shock for a moment when they remembered what I told them. Oh, that's nice. I'm very happy for your daughter. The one that tugs your shirt sounds like... It doesn't sound anything bad. I mean, I feel like the hospital ghosts, they never sound bad. They just sound... Sadly, there's a lot of death that does happen in hospitals, and I feel like it's people that... maybe like kids or people that have passed away and they don't really know what they're doing, or that was just the last kind of life that they had, so it's where they are, kind of. It sounds like they're just having a little bit of a play. If that was me and things were happening and I wasn't scared and I was in hospital, I would like probably just... you would just accept it, wouldn't you? You wouldn't, like, when it was in your house, you would be like, "I don't want this anymore, this needs to stop, it's whatever." But if you were in a hospital, I feel like you'd be a bit more... you're in their place, if you know what I mean. But also, when you were at home and you felt a hand run down your arm and a poke on your back, that's not okay. And I know you heard the screaming mum, but I think we discussed this on the last episode with me and Amy. That's called something, I can't remember what it's called. It's exploding head syndrome, is that what it's called? Where you're about to fall asleep, or you are asleep, and you jump up by someone shouting your name or like a loud noise, but it doesn't happen. I think that's actually a real thing, but I think it's called that anyway. Sorry if I've said that wrong and it's a completely different thing. But anyway, yeah, there's quite a few comments on this as well of other people's own experiences, so you can have a little read of them. I'm literally not going to read all of them because there are so many, and this episode will be about 3 hours long. So this next story is from the subreddit True Scary Stories, and it is titled Haunted Hospital. Hi everyone, I made a post a few months ago about an experience I had when I was a nursing student at a local hospital. It was like a glitch in the matrix kind of thing. They've linked it as well if you want to click on the story below that I've linked, and then they've put the link for that one if you want to read that. I'm now a full-fledged ER nurse resident at the same hospital, and now I can truly say that the place has something more going on in its halls and walls than just patient care. I had this experience a few hours ago before I got off my shift. Many of you may or may not be familiar with an Omnicell. It's an automated medication pull-up system that some hospitals use to store medications and easily access them during medication passes. Like an ATM, but for drugs. Being somewhat of a new nurse, I'm still at the point when I go through all the medication rates before I pull the administer meds, so it's safe to say that I'm not as fast as the other section nurses when I'm pulling meds. My preceptor and I had a patient who had orders for IV Keppra for seizures, so naturally, after reviewing the orders, I walked up to the med room where the Omnicell machine is located. It's a small room, just enough for one nurse to be in, which is a safety precaution to avoid distraction while pulling meds, although I've noticed it's a famous gossiping spot as well. The door has a small glass window that you can peek through. As I got in front of the door, I saw a man dressed in navy blue scrubs, just like my uniform, so naturally I waited until after they finished their med pull, as I assumed it was another nurse. I'm waiting out for a while, and I can still see the man inside, just standing in front of the Omnicell, not doing anything. I still haven't developed my assertive attitude, so I patiently wait longer. My preceptor soon comes up to me, asking why I'm taking so long, and I reason out, stating that there's still someone in there. He peeks into the room and gives me a bewildered look before saying, "What do you mean someone's in there?" We both peek through the window and look, and behold, the room is empty and I've been standing at the door on the guard the whole time, so he, or whatever was in the room, couldn't have left. That door is the only access in and out of that small room. It's spooky, I think, because it's a nurse this time. It's not like a child or like a patient. It's actually a nurse, because they were wearing the blue scrubs, which is a bit spooky. Because it's like, what are they doing there? You know what I mean? It could have been a reflection, maybe. I don't know. Okay, the final real spooky story I have today is from True Scary Stories, and it is titled What I Found at an Abandoned Psychiatric Hospital, True Occult Story. I quite like occult stuff, actually. I think I might do an episode on occult stuff. I know it's not paranormal, it's just spooky, but I quite like it. Okay, sorry. Yeah, I feel like this one's going to be a different vibe than like hospital, but it's kind of... Okay, whatever. Let's just go into it. I'd like to preface the story by acknowledging that truthfulness or reliability of asylum or escaped mental patient stories tends to be questionable. The reason why I'm sceptical of those stories is that a large-scale closures of asylums began in 1967 through the 1980s and were completely decommissioned by 2015. So I raise my eyebrow whenever someone talks about spooky asylum stories that happened within the last 2 decades or so. Still, I'll be sharing my story as factually as my memory allows and refrain from exaggerating any aspect because unfortunately, this story is true through and through. I often visited my grandparents' home in Traverse City in northern Michigan during the summers with my parents. Traverse City is a beautiful place, produces 75% of the world's cherries, and was home to the Traverse City Regional Psychiatric Hospital, which operated from 1885 to 1989. Since the United States federal government officially deemed the hospital worthy of preservation for its historical significance, the buildings on the hospital grounds were guarded by patrolling security guards. The TC Psychiatric Hospital was massive, including 70 or 80 buildings of various sizes. Some buildings have now been converted into restaurants, gift shops, tourism traps, cafes, etc., but many remain empty and abandoned. Underneath the hospital is a sprawling brick tunnel system which the hospital staff use to safely transport the patients from building to building in the frigid winter temperatures. I'm sure there were instances where the patients underwent cruel treatments or were subject to the care of horrible doctors, but the TC Psych Hospital had a great reputation. Many teenagers, including myself at the time, were unashamedly fascinated with the hospital and its history. As a result, we would often break into abandoned buildings through unbarred windows or doors with pickable padlocks. While there were a few cases where teens would get caught and charged with breaking and entering, as long as we were stealthy, stuck to our safe entrances, and paid attention to the guards' patrol patterns, we could go in and out without worry. I'm not advocating for or trying to justify my criminal act of breaking and entering, but breaking into the old hospital was almost a rite of passage for the TC teens. The hospital's interior was terrifying. There was old, stained and broken equipment and furniture, crumbling floors and walls, vandalism, strange, old building noises, and completely and utter darkness in the tunnels, basements and lower floors. Using flashlights was too risky with the guards patrolling, so we often navigated the hospital by memory and our dimly lit phone screens. As you can imagine, our frightened youthful imaginations ran wild with horror stories, which is pretty ironic considering we made up most of these stories. I'm sorry to disappoint, but I never encountered anything supernatural in all of my trips to the abandoned TC Psych Hospital. Unfortunately, during my last trip inside, I encountered something all too human that terrified me to the point I swore off ever returning. Sorry, just to cut in, this sounds too scary already. I know this isn't going to be something about paranormal and you've just said you didn't experience paranormal things, but you saying in the basements and the lower floors and the tunnels was pitch black. I know, I've went to Newsham Park Asylum. It's obviously abandoned now, but we did a ghost tour there, so it starts at 7 or 9 p.m. or something, and it goes till 3 a.m. in the morning, and even at 9 p.m. it wasn't, I think it was in the summer, so it wasn't even fully dark yet. It was pitch black down there, and we had to have torches, and even with the torches, it was so dark, so the fact that you're walking around with just your phone screen, it is scary. And yeah, if you hear all building noises, maybe it's not paranormal, but that is so scary to do, and it sounds fun. It does actually sound fun, but knowing that you're in an asylum and just knowing what the rooms you're in and stuff is just, yeah, it's just creepy, and the fact that, you're just going around with your phone screen, you're not going to be able to see, you're only going to be able to see exactly what's on the floor in front of you, you're not going to be able to see any further than that. That's just spooky. And I think we did experience paranormal stuff in Newsham Park Asylum, but we'll save that for another day. Okay, back to the story. The story takes place about 10 p.m. The moonlight was dim and most patrol guards left for the day. Clad in black, my friend Jason and I entered through the same window we always used and followed our regular path to one of the tall, jutting spires to sit by the windows that overlooked the entire city. There was only one thing different about this venture from our others, a new faint and unexplainable smoky odour, not smoky like fire, but something more akin to incense. The smell was so faint we almost thought we were imagining it, but it grew stronger as we got closer to our destination. Rather than taking the stairs that led up to the spire, we followed the smell down a different hallway until we reached the room with deep red glow emanating from the doorway. Rather than doing the smart thing by leaving immediately, we couldn't resist the urge to walk closer and investigate. When we finally reached the room, I audibly gasped and felt Jason grip my wrist so hard his nails left marks on my skin. We found a large ring and red votive candles and burning incense circling a drawing of a pentagram with the sigil of Baphomet. Sorry if I've said that wrong. In the centre of the drawing was a dead, bloodied bird surrounded by black feathers. Bear in mind that I was raised devoutly Catholic, so seeing this image filled me with a sense of fear, stronger and more paralysing than any ghost sighting ever could. Later on that night, Jason told me I immediately started mumbling prayers, but I personally don't remember doing that. I wouldn't be too terribly surprised though. While the duration felt infinite, I'm not sure how long we stayed at the occult scene before hearing a man's low and ominous voice behind us saying, "Welcome, friends." I promise you that there was absolutely nothing friendly about the way that guy greeted us. Jason and I screamed bloody murder, whipped around and saw two nicely dressed but frazzled looking adult men smiling at us. The man in front of me held something in his hand, and while I can't say for sure what it was, I remember thinking it was a knife at the time, which wouldn't be too crazy of a guess considering they recently sacrificed a bird. Jason and I sprinted past the two, and I felt someone's fingers grab the back of my shirt. Thankfully, the occultist's hand didn't have a solid hold on me, because I ducked and managed to escape his grip. The men shouted us for us to stop running. We obviously didn't. We heard their footsteps chasing after us for a little while, but thankfully Jason and I had broken into the hospital so many times that the running through the unlit rooms, hallways and tunnels was no challenge. When we finally reached and vaulted through our escape window, the occultists were nowhere to be seen or heard. We kept running through the hospital grounds until we reached Jason's car with no concern for the patrol guards. We would have rather gotten caught by the guards than the occultists. I puked twice in the parking lot. Whether the cause was fear, sprinting non-stop for a mile and a half, or a combination of both, I'm not sure what would have happened if the occultists caught us, but I know for certain they weren't going to crack open a beer and sing Kumbaya by the candlelight. I'm not familiar with the cultic practices or satanic rituals, so I'm not sure what the men were trying to do, or if they were summoning something. If anyone reading this post is more knowledgeable on the topic, please share your thoughts. Jason and I never returned to the hospital during that summer or any of the following summers. While we aren't close, now that we're adults, I know the horrifying experience will keep us cemented in each other's memories until we die. That was spooky. I've just said that I went to Newsham Park Hospital, and when I got home, I enjoyed it so much. And when I got home, because I know that I like watching, the ghost hunting shows where they go to the different places, and there was a few that I'd went there before, so I watched one, and they said that they went into this, there was I can't remember what it's called, the place where they burn the bodies. It was a little thing, but we didn't go in there. But on this show, they did go in there, and they said that in that room, there was people always used to sneak in and do satanic rituals. Why? Is it because of it being an asylum or a psychiatric hospital that people want to do these kind of rituals there, or is it just because it's somewhere abandoned? But then how did men get in and sacrifice a bird without the guards hearing or seeing, and a red light coming under the door? I don't know, it just seems a bit, unless they were in on it. But also I wonder what would have happened if you would have stayed. I don't think, like you said, they weren't about to crack open a beer, but at the end of the day, they wouldn't have done anything too mad, because then they've got to deal with that, and they've got to sneak back out past the guards, but then actually, if the guards were in on it, I don't know, and if they were scared at the moment, God knows what they could have done. You know what I mean? And like you said, you started praying, but you don't remember it. They could have been scared and just acted, and they wouldn't have even remembered what they'd done. You know what I mean? Oh my God, that's scary. Okay, so I'm going to read the creepypasta story now. This one, when I do the creepypasta stories at the end, it's not real. I know it's not real. I love the way they're written, and they're written so good. This one was actually only a month old, less than a month old. So yeah, I'm excited to read it. I just love the way creepypasta stories are written, and they're just, because they're written, I said this last time, they're written so well, because it's not just somebody explaining their experience, it's somebody telling a story, like in a film kind of way, where it gives you background and little things. I just love it. It just gives me a nice creepy, mysterious, spooky, it gives me, when you're on, or when you watch a horror film and you get scared and then you immediately laugh because it's you know it's not real. That's what this, kind of like an adrenaline. Okay, calm down, Jade. So this is titled, I Barely Survived 50 Hours in an Abandoned Mental Hospital, and it is from Creepypasta. It was supposed to be a joke, a dare, the kind of thing you do when you're too young to realise the consequences, too cocky to consider the risks. I should have never taken that challenge. It didn't even seem real. An abandoned psychiatric hospital on the outskirts of town, rumoured to be haunted, cursed, or something far worse. We'd heard the stories, of course. The place had been shut down decades ago, after a series of mysterious deaths and rumours of unethical experiments. But it wasn't until I walked through the decaying gates and felt that first cold shiver run down my spine that I realised just how wrong I was. The rusted gate creaked behind me as they closed, no turning back. The air was thick, stale, like the world itself had abandoned this place long ago. My footsteps echoed off the cracked tiles as I wandered the hallways of the forsaken St. Augustine's Psychiatric Hospital. The hospital was a maze, empty rooms, with peeling wallpaper, long corridors that stretched into infinity, and windows that had long lost their glass. At first, it was eerily quiet, too quiet. The silence pressed in on me, almost as if the building was waiting, but I had no time to be afraid. I had a dare to complete. I was here to prove I wasn't some scared child. Hours passed before I realised I was no longer alone. At first, it was just a flicker, a shadow in the corner of my eye that I couldn't explain, a fleeting movement, but nothing to worry about. But then the whispers began. Soft at first, too soft to make out the words, but loud enough to make the hairs on my neck stand on end. They came from behind me, from the walls, from nowhere. I spun around, searching the empty hallway for any sign of life, but I was still alone. I pressed forward. Maybe it was the wind. Maybe it was just my imagination, but deep down I knew it was something else, something that had been here for far longer than I could understand. I tried to push it from my mind, telling myself it was all part of the day. I was here for a reason and I was going to finish what I'd started. But as I walked further into the depths of the hospital, the whispers grew louder. The walls themselves seemed to hum with the voices of those long gone. I came across my first locked door. It was strange, really. The rest of the hospital was wide open, every room abandoned and forgotten. But this one was shut tight. There was something about it that made me stop. Something unsettling. I shouldn't have touched it, but curiosity got the better of me. The moment I touched the handle, the temperature in the hallway dropped. My breath fogged in front of me. The whispering intensified, now clearer, more urgent. I yanked the door open, and the sound of the hinges screeched in protest, loud and jarring. Inside, I found something I wasn't prepared for. There were bloodstains, dark and crusted, splattered across the floor. Restraint straps were still fastened to the walls. The room was a madhouse of broken furniture, shattered glass, and tattered patient files scattered across the floor. But it was the messages that caught my eye. Scrawled in what looked like dried blood, the walls were covered in a single phrase, repeated over and over. They never leave. We never leave. The whispering escalated into a cacophony of voices. Sorry if I said that wrong. Something moved in the corner of the room, something I couldn't see, but I could feel it watching me. I slammed the door shut, my heart hammering in my chest. I tried to find a way out, but the hospital was like a labyrinth. The walls seemed to shift, the hallways winding and turning black on themselves. I couldn't even tell how long I'd been inside. Hours, days. I felt like I was walking in circles, but couldn't escape. Every time I thought I found an exit, I found myself standing before a different door. The same faded sign above it, room 103. The whispers had become voices now, angry voices, and they weren't just around me. They were in my head. You're going to die here. It was a simple message, but it pierced through my mind like a knife. I began to panic. I ran, my footsteps heavy on the cracked tiles, my breath shallow. I wasn't alone. I could hear them, the sounds of movements behind me. Footsteps, scratching, something crawling just out of sight. I turned corners too fast, and my mind spinning. But it always felt like whatever it was always there. I wasn't alone. I wasn't alone. I don't know how long I wandered, but eventually I found something even more disturbing than the walls of hospital themselves. A hallway of mirrors. Each mirror reflected my image, but with slight distortions. My face was blurry in some, my eyes blackened in others. In one of the mirrors, I could have sworn I saw someone standing behind me, but when I turned around, nothing. The mirrors began to crack, one by one, spiderwebs of glass forming as if they were alive, taunting me with their reflections, and then the whispers turned into laughter. We can see you. I reached out, my hand trembling, but I couldn't touch the glass. It felt like there was something behind it, a force, something trying to get in. I had been running for hours, my breath ragged and desperate, when I found myself in the same hallway again, the same mirror, the same laugh. And then I saw it. A figure standing in the reflection, a woman or something resembling one. Her face was distorted, her features twisted into an unnatural grin. She wasn't in the hallway with me, she was in the mirror. The whispers stopped, the air grew thick, suffocating. I could hear the softest tap 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 behind me, but when I turned, no one was there. It was her, the woman in the mirror, and she was beckoning me. Come closer, she whispered, but her lips didn't move. The sound came from everywhere. I finally found an exit, a back door, cracked open just enough for me to squeeze through. My heart thundered as I stepped into the cold, fresh air of the night. I was free, but as I looked back at the hospital, I saw something that made my blood run cold. The windows, every single one, was glowing. Inside, the silhouettes of people, patients, pressed their faces against the glass. Their eyes were wide, hollow, and they all wore the same twisted grin. I stumbled backward, my legs giving way beneath me, but the sound of the door slamming shut echoed across the empty parking lot. I was free, for now. I didn't sleep for days after I left the hospital. I couldn't. Every time I closed my eyes, I could still hear those whispers, the way they echoed in the dark corners of my mind, telling me things I didn't want to hear, things I couldn't understand. My nights were filled with an oppressive silence, but when I woke up, there was something different in the air, something heavier. My house, once familiar and comforting, now felt like a prison. I had trouble even going to the bathroom without feeling like someone was watching me. And then there was the scratching. It started as a faint noise, like nails running across wood, just barely audible, but it was there. Every night, at first I chalked it up to the wind, to some old house settling, but as time passed, the scratching grew louder, more persistent. It came from beneath the floorboards. I couldn't take it anymore. My own house, my supposed sanctuary, was turning on me. I grabbed a crowbar, determined to find the source. When I pried the floorboards open, a cloud of dust billowed up, filling the air with a choking stench. The scratching stopped, but there was something worse now. A whisper. It was faint at first, like a soft wind brushing against my ear, but then I heard it more clearly, as though it was coming from the hole beneath the floor. It was a voice I had heard before. The woman from the mirror. "Come back," she said. "We're waiting for you." I slammed the floorboards back down, my heart racing in my chest. I thought if I just ignored it, maybe it would go away. But that's when I heard it, the unmistakable sound of something scratching at the door from the other side. The whispers didn't stop. They followed me, everywhere. I could hear them now, not just in the house, but outside too. On the streets, in the grocery store, every time I turned a corner, I felt their presence. I started seeing things too, faces in the crowd that shouldn't have been there. People staring at me with those same empty, hollow eyes that I saw in the windows of the hospital. At night, I began seeing shadows lurking at the edge of my vision, moving just a little too quickly to be natural. One evening, I was sitting in my living room when the lights flickered. I had no idea how much time had passed, but when the lights came back on, everything was different. The room felt smaller, the walls felt closer, and there, standing in the corner of the room, was the woman from the mirror. "We've been waiting for you," she whispered. Her voice was low, almost a growl, like the sound of 100 other voices wrapped into one. My breath caught in my throat. My body refused to move. It was her, the same twisted figure, her face distorted with that sickening grin, her eyes too wide, her lips curled into a smile that didn't belong on a human being. I wanted to scream, but no sound came out. I couldn't even blink. I just stood there, trapped in the room, paralysed by the sheer unnaturalness of what I was seeing. Then, just as quickly as she appeared, she was gone. But I knew she was still there, watching. The whispers started up again, this time louder. They were everywhere, in my head, in the walls, in the air I breathed. The following night, I couldn't sleep. It was as though the house itself was alive, breathing in rhythm with my panic. I had to leave. I had to go back to the hospital. Maybe, just maybe, if I returned to the place where it all started, I could end this nightmare. I drove there alone. It was the dead of night, and the familiar gates loomed in the distance, like the mouth of some hungry beast wanting to swallow me whole. The fog had rolled in thick, and everything was shrouded in this otherworldly mist that seemed to bend and pulse with its own life. When I got out the car, the air felt different, heavier. The whispers returned so close now that I could almost feel the words in my ears. I felt a hand brush against my shoulder, but when I turned, nothing was there. The doors of the hospital were still open. No creak of hinges, just an inviting, dark void that seemed to beckon me inside. I entered, the floor cold beneath my shoes, my heartbeat quickening with every step. I knew it was waiting for me. I walked through the halls of the hospital, the same twisted hallways I had wandered before, but this time they seemed more alive, more sinister. It was as if the building itself had been waiting for my return, and now it had me. The walls whispered my name in 1,000 voices, all overlapping, all sounding so eerily familiar. I stumbled into the room where I had first found the bloodstains. It was even worse now. There was more blood, more darkness. The shadows seemed to grow with every breath I took. And then I heard it, the sound of breathing, heavy, laboured, like something was waiting for me in the shadows. I turned to face it, and that's when I saw the reflection in the glass. My reflection, but it wasn't me. It was the woman, her face now frozen into a horrible mockery of my own. "You'll never leave," she whispered, and the walls began to close in around me. I ran, but every door I opened led me back to the same room. I was stuck, trapped. Hours, or maybe days, passed. Time lost all meaning. The air was thick with something heavy and dark, something ancient. The whispers never stopped, and I couldn't escape them. They were in the walls, in my head, in the very air I breathed. I didn't care anymore. I had lost all sense of myself. I was becoming one of them, a part of the hospital, a piece of its twisted, decayed history. The woman smiled at me one last time, her grin stretching wider than any human should. And then the whispers stopped. The doors opened. I thought I'd escaped. I thought I'd survived. But the whispers never stopped. They followed me home, creeping through the walls, watching me from the mirrors. My reflection isn't mine anymore. It smiles when I don't. It moves when I stand still. The hospital never let me go. Because it wasn't just a building. It was alive. And now it feels like it's coming inside me. I don't know what to do or how to react in this situation. That was a good story. Oh, it was so creepy. I wonder what the dare was. Like, what was the original dare? Who dared you? And when you originally were like, I got dared, I thought it was going to be like a group of you, or like you and a few of your friends were there. Like, because what was the dare? You know what I mean? And if someone dared you to go there, you just wouldn't. Or you just go in and leave. Like, I don't know. But yeah, I really like that story. I love the creepy vibes that it gives. The user who wrote that, by the way, was called special_win3942. It will be linked below along with the other stories. But thank you so much for listening. Also, I just want to say, I don't know if it's because I'm reading all these spooky stories all the time and it's real people's encounters, apart from obviously that one wasn't, and the Valentine's ones, 2 of them weren't. But I don't know if it's because I'm reading paranormal stories. I don't know if it's just because I love paranormal stuff and I watch it. I don't know if it's because I listen to paranormal podcasts and it's inviting things in. But the other night at 2:30am, the telly downstairs turned on by itself. And it's usually quite loud when it's getting watched. So it was on about 20. It was really loud. It was 2:30am. The telly turned on by itself. The remote was on the table as well. So it's not even like the remote fell off something and like it turned on. Or I was thinking maybe it was the batteries that are low and it done it. But the remote batteries do run out quite quick, and whenever you turn the telly on, it comes up at the bottom and says your batteries are low, consider changing them soon. So you know when the battery's low, and also it stops working a little bit, kind of, but that's not happened. The remote's literally fine. I don't know, that's never happened before, so I don't know what that was about, but it was a scary time. There's a camera in the living room. I even checked that and nothing. The camera wasn't actually on where the remote was though. It was just on a different part of the living room. But yeah, scary times. Just thought I'd add that in there. But anyway, thank you so much for listening to this episode. Also, do you like the new intro and the little music things in between each stories? I like them, the creepy vibes. But yeah, thank you so much for listening. If there's any specific topics or types of stories that you want me to do, please let me know. Comment below on whatever you're listening on, or send me a little DM on any of the social media platforms that are linked below as well. But thank you so much for listening to this episode, and I will see you next Sunday at 12pm. Goodbye.